Hello and a very warm welcome to Money Control. I'm Shweta Punj. We are days away from hosting the G20 summit in New Delhi, and India posted its first GDP numbers for this year at 7.8%, a tad below estimates, but still a good set of numbers at a time when global economy is straddling between 1 to 3%. Having said that, just a few hours from Delhi, our hill states are drowning. There's been unseasonal and torrential rainfalls that have cost lives and livelihoods. As India makes a leap towards Amrit Kal, how can India grow sustainably? To understand this in greater detail, I'm joined by Mr. Jayant Sinha, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance and Member of Parliament from Hazaribagh, and of course, former Minister of State of Finance and Civil Aviation. Mr. Sinha, many thanks for joining us. I want to begin by asking you, what's your assessment of the GDP numbers that have come out? It looks like India is a bright spot in a world that's still struggling to come back up post the pandemic, and of course with the war going on. It's been a tough one for the rest of the world, but India seems to be recovering and showing its resilience in a remarkable way.
Thank you very much, Shweta, for having me again on Money Control. Very happy to share my perspectives on the Indian economy right now. And of course, you're absolutely right. We've done a fantastic print, very strong GDP numbers, and also demonstrating why everybody believes that India is the shining star of the global economy, which is what I have said in Parliament and in the media many times. We are entering Amrit Kal extremely well positioned to being one of the top economies in the world. We are already, as you know, of course, the 5th largest economy. We are headed towards being the 3rd largest economy. But even as we do that, the question is, what's the kind of momentum we have going into Amrit Kal? And as you look at India's positives, those are really quite amazing, and that's why everyone is so excited about the India story. First and foremost, we have a young, healthy, motivated workforce, which is very important. Number 2, we have stable political leadership. We have a policy framework that we've been working on over the last 10 years that's showing dramatic results, and it's all around us. We can see it. Of course, Delhi is looking terrific for the G20, but all of India is looking terrific. Right. Infrastructure is being built out amazingly well. So that's the second factor. And third, geopolitics is actually helping us because of the competition between China and the US and all of those issues. Everybody wants to move their manufacturing into India. So going into the Amrit Kal, we are extremely well positioned. Our GDP growth rate, of course, as you pointed out, is strong. We dealt with the COVID pandemic in a terrific way. We've been very resilient coming out of it. And as a result of that, I think we will be able to grow very, very quickly for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Right. And that's really the Amrit Kal period till we get to 2047.
Sure.
And that is the real challenge before us. This is not just to grow at 7.8% for one quarter,
sure,
Shweta, not just for one quarter, but to keep growing for the next 25 years at this rate of 7-8%.
Right. So if we look at the numbers, Mr. Sinha, for the first quarter, we see that manufacturing is still lagging behind. If you look at these numbers, if you look at the EBITDA margins of the manufacturing companies, there seems to be a disconnect between what's been, what the fine print is in the GDP numbers and what the economists were expecting. Private investment, just getting the manufacturing sector going, has been one of the big challenges of this government of India, I would say, because it's been a consistent issue with us. I want to ask you, how much of a concern is it, one? And secondly, considering at a time when the world is looking at alternate destinations from China, what can India do? We have a PLI scheme. We are working on, getting investors. How can we really, how can we really take advantage of this opportunity?
So I think manufacturing for India is going to do extremely well over the next 10 or 20 years. And that's because of, a lot of supply chains coming to India, people wanting to use India as a production platform, as a manufacturing platform. It's because of the PLI schemes, which are really providing tremendous incentives for very important strategic sectors for us, including, of course, batteries, solar panels, automotive, textiles, chemicals. Many of these important manufacturing sectors are finally getting the kind of support that they need. And third, because we have the workforce, as I said earlier, what people are looking for is to put factories into India and then scale them up so that they can not only supply a large domestic market, which will continue to grow, but at the same time be a production platform for the rest of the planet. So if I'm Apple and I'm making smartphones in India, I want to make a lot of smartphones in India so I can export it to the rest of the world. If I'm making cars in India, I want to be able to export it around the world. So it's those factors that I think will really result in tremendous manufacturing investment coming into India, which is really good news for us with respect to job creation and GDP growth rate as well.
So we are in talks with Tesla. Apple has expressed interest. But on the other hand, we also have import curbs coming into play. We've announced licenses to for import of laptops and PCs and so on. So policy certainty is very, very important when it comes to just assuring the investor that okay, your investment will be protected and there will be ease of doing business. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the government is looking at this particular piece of the manufacturing puzzle?
So the most important policy certainty, Shweta, is that the Honorable Prime Minister is going to get re-elected again with a thumping majority. And that political stability, the fact that the Honorable Prime Minister is as popular as he is, and that India will continue to follow the policies that we have over the last 10 years, is perhaps the most important thing that we can communicate to investors and get their comfort on investing in India. With respect to the overall policy regime, you'll see that with GST, with the PLI scheme, with what we have done with respect to the infrastructure build out and the continued infrastructure build out, this overall policy landscape that foreign investors are seeing, that foreign companies are seeing, is very reassuring to them. So we are seeing tremendous interest in putting more investments into India. Please understand that people are looking to shift supply chains. Vietnam is tapped out, and so India becomes the natural place for this manufacturing to come in. Now, of course, it's very important even at the PLI level and at the import tariff level to have policy certainty. But of course, the government is completely seized of that. We are getting feedback all the time from investors, both domestic and foreign. And because of that, we have very responsive policy making. And we will continue to be able to provide a very supportive policy environment in India to attract these kinds of investments, because as I said earlier, this is vital for job creation, vital for GDP growth.
Right. So talking about overall, feeling of well-being in the economy, India's consumption story has picked up, but a lot of it is still being driven by urban India. How much of a concern is it for you, regarding the demand coming in from the rural economy? And yours is a semi-urban, quasi-rural constituency. So how much of a concern is it for you?
It's very difficult today now, Shweta, to talk about rural versus urban. And there's been a lot of research that's shown that even rural areas now have become very urban in their behaviors, etc. So that distinction between rural and urban is less important. That being said, we have to look at agriculture. And of course, agriculture is affected particularly because we're in the middle of the monsoon by the rainfall that we get. The fact that we've had the driest August is a matter of great concern for our farming communities, for agriculture. So it's less the rural-urban divide, I think, and more a question of how well agriculture is doing. If agriculture is doing well, then I think consumption in the rural sector and in the non-urban areas will also continue to do well. And so we have to really make sure that we provide the support to the agricultural sector so that people's consumption remains strong, that they're getting remunerative pricing, that they're able to sell their crops, and that they're able to make appropriate profits. If we get agriculture right, we'll get rural consumption right as well.
Right. So, I started by saying that there have been unseasonal rainfall. Some areas have got just very, very high rainfall, torrential rainfall, lives and livelihoods have been lost. Yet we had the IMD forecast yesterday that said that August was the driest August in nearly 100 years. So how, clearly there is a climate change pattern that's playing out, and it is hurting the economy. There was a big, a senior executive from an FMCG company who had commented about just tepid rural demand. So one of India's strengths is its demographic dividend and also its population. So, I want to get an understanding from you, considering there's so much work that you've done in the area of climate change, climate financing, and so on. But how serious is India in wanting to tackle this very eminent problem that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis now?
It's a very serious set of issues that you brought up associated with climate change. Let me first deal with the tactical issue.
Right.
And the tactical issue is, how do we get through one monsoon successfully, get crops at sufficient volumes, enough of a good harvest, keep prices stable, all of that. So that is monsoon by monsoon, season by season, that we have to manage it at a tactical level. And there the answer is, we have to build resilience every year, in every harvest. And the way you build resilience is by having irrigation, which of course in my own home district of Hazaribagh, we only have 50% of the fields that are irrigated. So we need to build irrigation, because what happens is, if you're getting enough of a monsoon, and we have had good monsoons, the reservoirs are full, जो झील हैं वो भरे पड़े हैं, तालाब भरे पड़े हैं, but we have to then use pumps, we have to use irrigation systems to be able to get the water into the field. तो एक तो ये है कि we have to build irrigation, सिंचाई बहुत जरूरी है. Second, we have to build cold storage facilities,
right,
so that if we have spikes, then we can get potatoes, onions, even tomatoes out of cold storage warehouses, and so we can deal with the ups and downs. Third, we have to build the food processing capability. So yes, if there is a problem with the tomato harvest for one particular season, then we have the tomato paste that we can use the curries, etc., etc. So all three are required to build more resilience in the agricultural value chain and deal with this spike that we're going to see in food prices because of these issues associated with climate change. And that's tactically what we have to do as soon as possible. As I said, build out irrigation, build out cold storage, build out food processing. All three are very required to build resilience. Now that's the short term. That's over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. We are obviously doing that. I think one of the very, very important breakthrough programs that's underway is the Pradhan Mantri Kusum Yojana, where we are providing solar pumps and solar-based irrigation systems. That you can do very easily. You can put it in every field, you can put it in every jheel and every talab, and these solar pumps can make all the difference. So I have been pushing in Hazaribagh the Kusum Yojana very hard. जिसको भी सिंचाई के लिए सोलर पंप की जरूरत है, उसको हम लोग सहयोग दे रहे हैं और उनको हम लोग सोलर पंप्स दे रहे हैं. So that's something we need to do. Now, longer term, the Honorable Prime Minister has laid out a very visionary goal for us, which is to get to net zero by 2070, which means we have to thoroughly transform the entire economy. Only if we can thoroughly transform the entire economy, we'll be able to get to net zero. We'll have built the resilience, but we will have also reduced our emissions.
Sure.
And both are required to be able to have a sustainable future where we can grow not at 5 or 6%, but at 8%. So to get to 8% growth, decarbonization, getting to net zero, sustainable prosperity is the term I use. Sustainable prosperity is extremely important, and that's the longer term goal over the next 25 years, so we can sustainably grow at 8%. And there, as I say often, net zero is net positive.
Right.
Net zero is net positive. If we pursue net zero, we drive much faster growth, much higher job creation, much lower risk of air pollution or climate change.
So what are the economic models that you see? So far, there have been some models that India has also tried to follow, and we've built our own as well. Manufacturing has been one mainstay of growth, right? And that's what India is trying to emulate. We built on our services economy. What are the evolving economic models that you feel that India needs to adopt or has already adopted to get to this net zero,
So Shweta, that's a very good question. Thank you for giving me that opening, because I have been stressing that India needs a completely different development model. There's a development model that China and Japan and Korea and even the US and others have followed. That's called farm to factory. Right? Farm to factory. We can't do farm to factory anymore because of a whole host of reasons, sustainability being one, manufacturing capacity already around the world being in excess being a second one. So farm to factory as a development model is not going to work. So what I have proposed is a green frontier development model, a green frontier development model. That's a net zero development model for India. And I say that instead of going from farm to factory, we have to go from farm to the green frontier, from farm to frontier instead of farm
Can
to
you
factory.
explain what is this green
So
frontier?
let me explain to you what I mean by the green frontier. The production possibility frontier is where you are using technology in the best possible way. So we have to be at the production possibility frontier. That means our technology, our manufacturing, our services has to be as efficient, as competitive as anyone else in the world. So we have to compete with and beat China. We have to compete with and beat Germany. We have to compete with and beat the United States. We have to be at the competitiveness frontier. Second, we also have to be at the sustainability frontier. We have to be heading towards net zero, because if we are going to have to deal with climate change, which is an existentialist crisis for humanity, and you can see that climate change, whether it is the driest August in 100 years, whether it's the landslides in Himachal Pradesh, whether it's the flooding that happened in Pakistan last year, these effects of climate change are here and now.
Absolutely.
Climate change is not about 10 or 20 years from now. Climate change is today. So we have to transform our economy to be able to reduce carbon emissions, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and at the same time pursue competitiveness. So this combination of competitiveness and sustainability,
Right.
competitiveness and sustainability, that's the green frontier.
Right.
And that's the development model that we have to pursue. It's not about farm to factory, it's about farm to frontier, farm to green frontier, where we are heading towards sustainable prosperity. Now, let me add some numbers to this, Shweta, and I'll tell you why this notion of sustainable prosperity is so important for us. We are entering our Amrit Kal, our golden period over the next 25 years. We are very well positioned, as I said. Now, we have to understand the power of compounding. If we are able to grow at 8% a year, and we just printed a 7.8% quarter, if we are able to grow 8% a year, then we will be able to, from the economy that we have right now, a $3.54 trillion economy, in 25 years of Amrit Kal growing at 8% a year, we'll have a $25 trillion economy with GDP per capita of 15,000. If we grow at 8% for the next 25 years of Amrit Kal, we will have a $25 trillion economy with $15,000 GDP per capita. We will be the size of the US economy is today, and we will be a high income country because that's after $14,000 GDP per capita. That's where we will be if we grow at 8%. On the other hand, if we grow at 6%, Shweta, if we grow at 6%, then we are going to be a $15 trillion economy with a $9,000 GDP per capita. That's the power of compounding. 8% we get to $25 trillion.
Yeah.
6% we get to $15 trillion. $15 trillion, $25 trillion. $9,000 GDP per capita, $15,000 GDP per capita. The difference between growing at 8% for 25 years versus growing at 6% for 25 years is night and day.
And that's still lower than what the GDP per capita in the United States
Oh, the
is.
GDP per capita in the United States today is $76,000.
Exactly. So
right?
it's-
So we are not talking about GDP
Yeah.
per capita in the US at all.
Yeah.
We are talking about, at best, if we grow at 8% sustainably for 25 years, we get to $25 trillion and $15,000 GDP per capita. But remember, if we grow at 6%, we are at $15 trillion, and at $15 trillion, we are smaller than China is today. If we grow for 25 years at 6%, Shweta, we'll be at $15 trillion, we'll be smaller than China is today. So it's imperative for us to deal with climate change, to take advantage of our young workforce,
Absolutely.
our demographic advantage that we have right now, and grow at 8%. So 8% growth is absolutely vital, and I believe we can do that by following the green frontier development model. At 8% growth, there will be jobs for everyone. There will be social security for everyone. We will have a world-class education system, if not a world-leading education system. All of these things are going to be ones that we can deliver if indeed we are able to grow at 8%. If we grow at 6%, it becomes a lot more difficult. And there are, of course, a whole series of global challenges that we have to deal with, climate change being one of them. But we are also dealing with a situation where the great power competition between US and China means that the world trading system, the world economic system could break. If the world economic system fractures and instead of growing at 6%, we grow at 4%, then you begin to see some very, very difficult challenges that we're going to have to deal with. So fast growth for India, the green frontier development model for India, sustainable prosperity for India, these are absolutely vital. We have to focus on those.
So for this, we need financing. Do you think there's an appetite in the world to, finance India's green growth ambition? As you're constantly meeting people from around the world, what is the sense that you get?
So Shweta, as you know, I have been working on green development, India's unique development model, climate finance, all of these issues in the last 4 or 5 years. We've had many discussions in the Standing Committee on Finance. I have worked on many research efforts. I have engaged very deeply in the G20 process as well. I have met with countries around the world on this whole issue of climate finance. And the answer is yes, we can do it. And we need to do it, as I said before. If we can get the climate finance that we require, then we can be sure that instead of growing at 6%, we will grow at 8%. So climate finance, decarbonizing our economy, going towards sustainable prosperity, meeting our SDG goals, these are precisely the levers, Shweta. These are precisely the levers that we have to pull to go from 6% growth to 8%.
Okay.
Now let me tell you why that's so important. Today, if you look at private sector investment in India, which actually is the real source of economic growth, private sector capex. Private sector capex in India is about $75-80 billion a year. That's about 5 to 6 lakh crores a year. We need to increase that. The more private sector investment we get, the more jobs we create, the more tax revenues, the more GDP growth, etc. So private sector investment is the key to long-term sustainable growth, right? Now, if we are only getting 5 or 6 lakh crores a year of private sector investment, that will drive 6% growth. But for us to decarbonize, we have to basically double private sector investment. So instead of 5 or 6 lakh crores of investment, we need 10 to 12 lakh crores, an additional 5 or 6 lakh crores a year of investment. That will go into
so where
renewables.
Where will that money come from? Which countries?
Yes, so it will come from the requirement that is obvious to everyone for climate finance. And to do that, we have to transform the multilateral development banks. We have to transform the IMF. We have to transform the World Bank. We have to transform the Asian Development Bank.
That is a big agenda point of the G20
yes,
as
it's
well.
a huge agenda, and that's what we've been working on in the agenda. There's an independent expert group which is chaired by Shri N.K. Singh and Professor Larry Summers. They are working on this MDB reform, and what we have to do is the World Bank has to change its model.
Yes.
Instead of the World Bank giving loans to only the government, the World Bank, the IMF, the Asian Development Bank, all of these have to really focus on mobilizing private sector capital. If we get them to mobilize private sector capital, then they can provide the support that the private sector needs in the global north to ensure trillions of dollars of investments flow from the global north to the global south. That India, which needs this 5 or 6 lakh crores of additional private sector investment, is able to get it. And there, as I said, the World Bank, the IMF, the Asian Development Bank have a very important role to play. If we can transform them to really mobilize private sector capital, and that's the triple agenda that Shri N.K. Singh is talking about, if we can mobilize them, then that capital will flow into India. We will deploy it in building solar plants, we will deploy it into building battery storage plants, we'll deploy it into building electric vehicles, we'll deploy it into building new blast furnaces run on green hydrogen, we will build out the green hydrogen supply chain, we will transform cement, we'll transform fertilizers, we'll transform real estate. All of these sectors of the economy will see tremendous investment flows, and these are the investment flows. This is the private sector investment that will take us from 6% growth to 8% growth, and that is the green frontier development model.
Okay, but closer home, when we look at the agenda that's being set by political parties, we have multiple state elections. What we get to hear is a slew of freebies. We get to hear about free laptops, free money, and all of that. As someone who's tracked the economy and continues to track the economy very closely, Does it worry you, Mr. Sinha, that while India is trying to grow, it's trying to set a new model of growth, it's talking about Amrit Kal and all of that, yet there is a sense that in certain states, and maybe other states will follow suit too, we are taking regressive politics to another level, which is just bad economics. And the damage is going to be very, very deep, something that the future generations will have to pay for. I want to understand from you, when announcements are made where freebies are only added to the list of doles that are being given out to voters, what's the kind of damage that it does to an economy?
No, it does tremendous damage, obviously. And we as a government have been extremely responsible. Around the world, everybody recognizes that in the last 10 years, the social safety net that has been built by our government under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister is incomparable, that it has been absolutely a game changer for India's poor. We've taken a lot of people out of extreme poverty, and we are on track essentially to end extreme poverty in India, because we built a really solid social security system, a very good safety net. And what we need to do is we need to distinguish between the provision of public goods,
right,
with very high positive externalities, the social safety net that is required, with freebies. So there's a very big difference between a safety net and freebies.
Sure.
And let me draw this distinction between them. Healthcare, education, income support, right? Providing resilience in terms of floods, droughts, all of that. All of these areas are part of the social safety net. Giving away Mangal Sutras and TVs and things of that sort is not part of the social safety net. That is giving away private goods, not building public goods through a social safety net. So yes, should we spend more money on healthcare and provide everybody very good, high quality, affordable healthcare through public hospitals and through a single payer system? Absolutely, I believe in that. Should we provide world-class education at very affordable prices to people? Of course, I believe in that.
Right.
Should we provide income support to people who are going through some kind of catastrophic illness, or because they have suffered from big floods? Absolutely, I believe in that. Should we provide pensions to people over the age of 60? Absolutely, I believe in that. And everywhere where countries have succeeded in terms of their economic growth, they have been able to provide those safety nets. So we have to provide those safety nets, and those safety nets are very, very important for people so that they can grow, prosper, thrive, etc. Very, very important. But that's very different from a freebie, revdi culture.
Right.
So do we need to build a fantastic safety net and give people healthcare, give people education, give people insurance, give people pensions? Absolutely. Right? And we have to have the economic growth that can pay for that. But should we be focusing on these gimmicks to win votes in a single election? I don't think that's the right thing to do. And frankly, as you can see from the Honorable Prime Minister's track record, that's what he did in Gujarat. That's what we've done in Delhi as well. And we are showing that if you provide that enduring safety net, if you provide people that security, that results in much more popularity, much more confidence, and far better electoral outcomes. So this freebie culture is a short-term gimmick. You think it's going to work, but I think people much more appreciate healthcare, which is what we've done with Ayushman Bharat. They appreciate education, which is what we've done with Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. They appreciate the Pradhan Mantri Swasth Garib Kalyan Yojana, where we provided food support. They appreciate the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So these are all public goods with very high positive externalities.
Sure.
Very big difference between that and this freebie culture.
Sure. My last question. Moody's came out with a report where they spoke about the India story, but they also cited what's happening in Manipur as a concern. At a time, in times of today, where rating agencies are constantly evaluating countries, I want to get your sense from, how is the government and how are you looking at this assessment by Moody's? Is this something within the purview of a rating agency? And as someone who has closely tracked countries before, is this an aberration, or do you think that this kind of assessment is something that they're expected to do and they're just doing their job?
So Shweta, I'm not a member of the government. I'm a legislator and
Sure.
of
Member
course,
of the BJP.
as a member of the BJP. Look, I can't speak about Moody's and what factors go into their assessment, etc. I think what we have to look at is India's economy. When you're looking at a credit rating, our economy is very robust, very resilient. We are the fastest growing large economy in the world. We have tremendous policy stability. We've undertaken extraordinary reforms. The kind of reforms that India has done in the last 10 years, no other economy on the planet has done, whether it's GST, IBC, PLI, whether it's the social safety net that I spoke about earlier. We have built a very robust and very strong foundation for fast growth going forward. Obviously, there are challenges. There are always global challenges of climate change, of the trading system, of geopolitics. Those always exist, but we are extremely well positioned. Mm-hmm. The key for us is to maintain 8% growth for the next 25 years, Shweta. And I think as we do that and we attract more capital flows, we attract more investment, we grow jobs, all the rating agencies are going to improve their ratings for India.
Okay. Any message to the world, Mr. Sinha? Message to the investors, message to the rating agencies, and on India, on India's growth story.
India is open for business. India is open for investments. You can come here. You can build, terrific factories. Find a very disciplined, dedicated workforce that wants to enable you to succeed, that wants to succeed in their own lives. And I think India gives you an unparalleled production platform, either from a manufacturing perspective or a services perspective. We are open for business. We are open for investment.
All right. On that very positive invitation to invest in India, I'd like to close this conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinha, for those wonderful insights and a very candid analysis on why India needs to embrace a sustainable path for growth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shweta.
Thank you.
How do world leaders view India?
I've long believed that the relationship between the United States and India will be one of the defining relationships of the 21st century.
The bright spot of the global economy.
The growth rate for India, which is 6.8 in 2022. Let's not forget, this is one of the bright spots in the global economy right now, such a high growth rate.
The potential of India is enormous, and you have now a reformer, a radical reformer, who has the ability to transform it.
On the verge of a big transformation.
इस अमृत काल में हमारे संकल्पों की सिद्धि हमें आजादी के 100 वर्ष तक ले जाएगी.
A magnet for investment.
I'm actually incredibly excited about the future of India. I think India has more promise than any large country in the world.
The world is bullish on India. Moneycontrol is bullish on India. Join the campaign. Tweet to us with #MC Bullish on India.